Hey everybody, it's Sunday night. Welcome back to the channel. This is the Cultural Confederacy, and we got to talk about Macy Gray. Yes, that one-hit wonder who thinks she's still relevant. Anybody remember Macy Gray? I don't think this woman has had a hit, in 20 years? Well, she's back in the news because this past Thursday, and she's part of the woke crowd now, this past Thursday, she took to social media, I believe it was on Twitter, to rail against the American flag. She called the American flag tattered, divisive, oppressive. At one point said the American flag is a replacement for the Confederate battle flag, aka slavery. Now I find this to be a real scream because I own a Confederate battle flag. I also own an American flag and a Bonnie Blue flag. By the way, the Bonnie Blue was the very first flag flown by the Confederacy in the early days of the Civil War, and there's a reason for that. Back in 1810, you had a group of settlers in what we now know as Baton Rouge that wanted to declare their independence from Spain. So they were under Spanish rule, and the Spaniards controlled that area of Louisiana, part of the Mississippi. And these colonists had asked for U.S. government's help and recognized them as a colony with the end goal of becoming the state of Florida. That would have been their official name. Well, the United States government refused because they didn't want to get into a war with Spain. So on September 26, 1810, the settlers raised the Bonnie Blue flag and declared themselves the Republic of West Florida, took over the barracks at Baton Rouge. Now, the Bonnie Blue flag is a blue flag with one white star, and that is the root of the Confederate battle flag. But Southerners never forgot the Republic of West Florida, never forgot that incident. I don't know if Macy Gray is aware of that or not. And in 1860, 1861, you had this fight between the Lincolnites and the Jeffersonians. Abraham Lincoln believed in centralized power, where the Jeffersonians believed in limited government power, more states' rights, and individual liberty. You have this agricultural society in the South fighting against Northern industrialization. And the dirty little secret about the Civil War is it was not fought to end slavery. Listen up, Macy Gray. It was not fought to end slavery. It was fought because of economics and to keep slavery in the South and not have it expand into the Western territories. That's what it was all about. But Northerners invested in Southern plantations. You had a lot of Southern politicians who were actually born in the North. You had banks like the Bank of New York investing in those Southern plantations. So there were views all over the place. People in the South who were anti-slavery and pro-slavery. People in the North who were pro-slavery and anti-slavery. But that's the truth about the Civil War. It was really fought over expanding slavery into the Western territories because Lincoln favored industrialization. But that wasn't the main issue at the time. And if you read the CSA Constitution, you can clearly see this. Because the word slavery is nowhere to be found in the preamble to the Constitution. Here's what I think happened. I think you had slavery in existence in the South. They knew it. They decided to secede. They had to deal with this issue of slavery, which at the time was like, these plantations were like corporations. And they were trying to answer or address a legal question, constitutional question that was not addressed when they implemented the U.S. Constitution. Now, here's where the whole argument over the Civil War is all about slavery falls apart. And that is that if the CSA seceded, then at that point, the United States becomes a separate country. So any laws regarding slavery in the United States are on the United States, not the CSA. And by the way, the CSA did allow for free states to join, and any state within the CSA could become a free state if it chose to do so. There's nothing in the CSA Constitution that prevents any state in the CSA from becoming a free state if they chose to do so. And the reason for this is found in the preamble, which states, and this is a reference back to the Articles of Confederation, our very first Constitution, but it states in the CSA Constitution preamble that each state acts in its sovereign and independent character. And they want to form a permanent federal government. So the states are central to the document, central to the CSA Constitution. And they put such restrictions on the federal government, on Congress in the CSA, that if a federal judge acted in the character of a state, that state legislator could impeach the federal judge. The president had one 6-year term. They put on Congress these restrictions of her spending. Congress could not spend any money on public works projects. That was left to the states. The post office had to be self-sufficient. So there are some major changes in the CSA Constitution compared to the U.S. Constitution. But the U.S. Constitution can be considered somewhat of a slave document because you have the Fugitive Slave Clause. You also have the Three-Fifths Compromise. And the reason why we have the Three-Fifths Compromise, or why they had the Three-Fifths Compromise, is because northern states did not want southern states having more representation than they did. Sounds like a power grab, doesn't it? But see, these are things that Macy Gray doesn't know. And if she still wants to say that the United States is racist, sexist, homophobic, and it's all based on white supremacy, that's what we were founded to put down the black community or Hispanics or Asians, then maybe she's never heard about the 1891 verdict in the David Hennessy trial in New Orleans. David Hennessy was the police chief at the time, and he was killed. There was a trial. And when the verdict was read, 11 Italian Americans were lynched. They raided the jail and dragged out these Italian Americans, lynched them within feet of a Confederate monument. In fact, I think that's one of the Confederate monuments that is in the works of being taken down as we speak. That's a true story. World War I and World War II, huge anti-German sentiment in this country. You have posters that portrayed Germans or German Americans as barbaric. They called them kraut. They were even beaten in the streets. During World War II, 11,507 German nationals or German American citizens were interned alongside the Japanese and 250 Italians. And then you had 600,000 Italians during World War II that were screened or surveilled by executive order. What about the treatment of the Irish in New York? The fact that slave owners would use the Irish to do the most dangerous jobs. Most of the Irish that came over here were indentured servants, if not all of them. But they'd send out the Irish to do these, and some of the Scottish as well, maybe a few Asians too, who lived in the South, send them out to do the most dangerous jobs because they didn't want their slaves being injured, and slaves were expensive. But Macy Gray, once again, doesn't know this because she hasn't opened up a history book. Folks, this is the greatest country on the planet. And yes, we've had our flaws. Yes, we had slavery, but we no longer have slavery. We had Jim Crow. We no longer have Jim Crow. But those Jim Crow laws also affected poor whites living in the South. Things like the grandfather clause, poll taxes, literacy test. This is really what life was like back during Reconstruction. Freed slaves living next to a white family who had no running water. And God help you if you lived on the plains, the Great Plains, because you could catch cholera. That's what life was like. I actually lived out in the Old West. And folks, I tell you, when you live there and you read the history about it, it's a lot different than what you see on TV or what you read in a history book. You have to go to that place and put your shoes in the shoes of that person, or put yourself in the shoes of that person who lived at that time. See, our mistake is looking at this issue of slavery or the Civil War through the lens of the 21st century, or even the 20th century, given Jim Crow and the Civil Rights Movement in the 1960s. But we have to look at things in terms of what it was like to live back in the middle part of the 19th century, when you had mass poverty in East London, and you really didn't have OSHA. You had children that were being exploited in factories in England, being injured. This is all true, folks. It's all true. But the great thing about our country, the United States, is we have always found a way to reconcile our differences. We've always found a way to correct our errors. And the fact that Macy Gray has made all this money off of her songs as a black artist should tell you that we have made great strides in this country. I'll tell you what, if I had to choose between the Confederate battle flag, the American flag, the Betsy Ross flag, I would choose the Confederate battle flag and the Betsy Ross flag because I believe that really is the true American ideal. You see, when our country was founded, we weren't founded as a nation. We were founded as a confederate of states, Articles of Confederation. Is it any wonder then why the CSA called themselves the Confederate States of America? They wanted to return to that original ideal. And at the time, all 13 colonies practiced slavery. fact, the King of England promised to free the slaves from the rebel masters if they would join the British. Article 1 of the Articles of Confederation says this: the style, S-T-I-L-E, of this confederacy shall be the United States. The style of this confederacy shall be the United States. So we're really a nation built on slavery, on Jim Crow. By the way, Jim Crow laws started in the North, 1830s, 1840s, 1850s. Boston, Nantucket, that area. In 1974, busing riots in Boston. You can find clips of this here on YouTube. But once again, we have always found a way to reconcile our differences in this country. This still is a great country. So Macy Gray needs to open up a history book. Instead of saying that the American flag is terrible or that it represents a Confederate battle flag. No, it doesn't. What we know now is the American flag was actually the Union flag. And I hate to say it, but unfortunately, your Republicans out there, I'm talking about the rhinos, believe in this idea. Both the Democrats and the Republicans, which you need to know, folks, Republicans and Democrats, they believe in centralized power. They really do. They want power. That's what they want. That's why we have D.C. They want to expand their influence across the globe. I'm not a conspiracist, but that's what they've shown to do over the past century. Got all these police wars, so to speak, in Central America back in, the 80s, early 90s? So I think I'm going to side with the Confederate battle flag and the Betsy Ross flag. Actually, I have a tattoo of the Betsy Ross flag. I kind of want to do something with the Confederate battle flag, kind of add it to it somehow. I don't know how I can work that out. But folks, the American flag is not racist. The Confederate battle flag is not racist. The Betsy Ross flag is not racist. The Bonnie Blue flag is not racist. It is a part of our history and our culture as Americans. We should take pride in it. A lot of you are going to say, yeah, well, that Confederate battle flag, that's equivalent to the Nazi flag. I'm of German descent, Irish and German descent. Can I tell you something? No comparison. I don't remember mass genocide being committed against the black community or slaves in the South. In fact, there were laws protecting slaves in the South. You could not injure or maim a slave. There were severe punishments for that in the South. Check out the Georgia slave law, 1755 to 1860, or whenever it was when we had the Civil War. 1755 to 1860, I think it was, or 1865. But that is the truth, folks, about our country. This is still a great country. And we had a lot of groups or ethnic groups that suffered under our government. The Irish, the Italians, the Germans, the Czechs, the Slavs, the Polish, on top of the blacks and the Hispanics and the Asians. In other words, everybody has gotten it in the end, okay? That's just the truth of mankind, because mankind is flawed. I mean, look at the history of Africa, all the tribal wars in Africa. I would not want to live anywhere else but the United States. So I don't want to say adios to old glory. I think we should keep the flag. Now, I think the design of the Confederate battle flag is a little more exciting. Actually, it has its roots in Scotland. One of the oldest known flag symbols in Scotland, St. Andrew's Cross. It was a symbol against tyranny of the British. But I love this country, like I said, and I'm going to sport my Confederate battle flag, which means every single one of you out there should be getting yourselves a Confederate battle flag and a Betsy Ross flag. Getting back to our roots as Americans. The idea of being independent, sovereign and independent. Less government power, more power to the people. And Macy Gray has had that power. She's been able to exercise that power by going out there and having these number one hits or what have you. Even if it hasn't been a hit in, 20 years? Or she hasn't had a hit in 20 years. So I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please click that like button, subscribe. Hit me up on Instagram at #JasonComposes. You can leave comments below. And now you can reach me at Twitter, Cultural Confederacy at Twitter. Once again, I'm trying to get all my accounts synced up. But thank you for being with me. I love doing these videos for you. And I hope you all have a great week. I'll catch you next time. This is the Cultural Confederacy. Stay safe, everybody. And God bless this great country. Peace out.